What's up, students? It's Mr. McDonald. I recognize a lot of people had to stay home this week because of a few COVID cases that we've had in class. And so I have today's lesson for you guys online right here. And I'm going to post the homework as well on Google Classroom. So we missed you guys. Hope that you guys can return soon. Today we're going to be talking about the hypostatic union. So let's get right into it. As well, I should also have the warm-up posted for you guys in the text section of the Google class assignment. So let's see if we can get this to look good. I don't know if you guys can still see me, but let's go ahead and just do that. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is God the Son. We're talking about the economy of the Trinity. We've talked about the Father. Now let's talk about the Son. One of the most important things we want to talk about with Jesus and understand with Jesus, God the Son, is that Jesus was fully man and fully God. This is what all Christians have believed about Jesus. And if you don't believe this, you can't technically rightly be considered a Christian. And we believe this is what the Bible says. There's a number of scriptures. I'll put a few more up there later. Two, this is kind of what it means. Jesus is fully God. We believe that it was necessary for Jesus to be fully God in order to redeem humanity and bear the weight of sin, because one person's sin really could hold another person's burden. So like one person could die in the stead of another person or take the punishment for one person, but not all people or all Christians, depending on how you view it. So what it came down to is essentially this understanding that Jesus was fully God, 100%. He wasn't a created being in the sense that he existed before eternally with the Father. So other point is that Jesus was fully man, which means that it was necessary for him to be fully man in order to be tempted in every way. If Jesus wasn't tempted in every way, then he really didn't share our burden. And his death on the cross wouldn't mean anything because he would not have overcome sin, right? So we had to believe that he was fully man as well in order to be the substitute sacrifice. And it's also important to note that a physical body is necessary to receive wrath. Christians historically believe that Jesus resurrected with a physical body, and that he was what Adam should have been. So he fulfilled the original purpose of man by living a sinful life. So this is a great mystery. A lot of people have debated this over the centuries. There's whole volumes written on it. You could get like a whole encyclopedia set worth of books on this and study it. I mean, you can imagine there's 2,000 years of people studying it. And there's a lot to know, but it's a really important truth in our faith. It's called the hypostatic union. It's the union of Jesus' human and divine natures into one being. So if you guys have notes, make sure that you're taking notes on that. Let's see if I can make this work a little bit better here. Okay, so the next slide, I'm going to just talk about how these words work. So, go away. Let's see, is there a way I can zoom in here? Nope. Okay, so hypostatic union is broken down like this. Hypo meaning under. So when you think hypodermic needle. So a needle that goes under the dermis or the skin. Hypo means under. Static means still. Things are static if they don't move. If they do change, they're called dynamic. So it's kind of under and still, sort of like substance, sort of like the ground that you stand on. It's like of one substance, right? And union means oneness from multiple. So many things that make one. Like a marriage is a union of two people into one flesh, right? As the Bible states. A union in the political sense is a group of people who organize as a worker party. So bring them all down here, and we eventually get to the understanding that the hypostatic union is the divine and the human in one, is represented in Jesus in his bodily form. So there's artist renditions of this, and sometimes this might look a little weird, but this is actually really good to see. Let's see, can I zoom in a little bit? 200%? No, it's too far, huh? That's better. Okay, so if you look at these artist depictions, at least this first one, it's strange because it looks like the painter kind of messed up Like, it doesn't match, it's not symmetrical. This actually, though, was done on purpose. What the artist this is, by the way, one of the oldest depictions of Jesus we have. What the artist wanted to do is actually show this doctrine through a painting, and what they showed was that although one person, there's kind of two distinct entities, or persons, I guess, within the one being is the best way to say it. So on one side, you have, kind of a smoother looking eye, and this eye's kind of looking a different direction. You see this eyebrow's a little skewed, while this one's smooth. You have a shorter mustache, a more higher cheekbone here. The nose is different. You see the ears higher on this side than on this side. It's just different, right? But they're trying to show the two different natures of Jesus in one. And then you have the scripture and then the Christian gang sign right here, as we say. On this one, you can see, basically someone took a computer and they did a mirror of the left side of the image, and they duplicated it over. And you can kind of see if it was symmetrical, what it would look like as one entity, and then on the other side, what it would look like as the other. And you have two beings that look distinct, although you could kind of tell that they're the same. So this would be the God nature and the human nature of Jesus, and then in one you have the original art. So pretty cool. I like that depiction. This is Christ Pantocrator. That's in St. Catherine's Monastery. You guys can look that up on your own. So now we're going to talk about the main event, essentially where this debate took place in history. And this is at 325. That was called the Council of Nicea. Council of Nicea is very strange, and it was a first in a lot of ways. So it's important for us to know about it. So I want you to know what was going on in the Council of Nicea, so that if you're ever asked about it, or if you need to look it up, you'll know at least somewhat of what happened at the Council of Nicea. So basically, all the top church leaders got called together to debate the nature of Jesus. Was he created by God? Was he divine? Did he always exist? Was he fully human or half human? Was he half God, half human? There's a lot of these questions, but Christians generally believed he was fully God and fully human. They believed in the Trinity. But what happened was this other teacher, this bishop, so he was a pastor. He gained a lot of popularity, and he taught that Jesus was a created being, that God actually created him. And if the Father created the Son, then the Son could not be equal to or of the same substance as the Father. So this created a lot of drama, obviously, and there was a group that was called together of all of the top church leaders in the known world at that time, where Christianity was at, and they all came and sat at this council. We're going to talk about it. So Arius was on one side. He believed Jesus was created. This is where you get Arianism. On the other side was Alexander of Alexandria and Athanasius. And if you guys know my classroom, I got a picture of Athanasius up there. Athanasius argued that Jesus was uncreated and he was one with the Father in the more Trinitarian view of the hypostatic union. The result of the council was that pretty much everybody agreed with Athanasius, and Arius was he was actually, I think, banned or sent into exile. So he was basically not allowed to teach, and they sent him away, right? Which I think, whatever your opinion of that is, but he wasn't allowed to teach it, right? According to church doctrine, he was basically teaching a false teaching or a heresy. So one of the results of this meeting was a short statement of faith called a creed, and we're going to talk about those tomorrow. But basically, a creed is a short statement of faith that everyone who's considered a Christian should agree with. So as you can imagine, the creed that came from this has a name, if you can tell from Nicaea, the Nicene Creed. And you might be from a church. I had one student who used to go to a church where they would recite this, okay? Very important to understand. This was a huge event in church history. And here's another reason why. Number one, this is a major dividing point in Christianity. So this is one of the events that marks a change of pace, if you will, or a change of how Christianity was expressed. So from the years 0 to about 70, That's pretty much argued to be the apostolic period, where the apostles were still alive and they were teaching about Jesus and compiling the books of the Bible and things like that. Um, After that apostolic period, you have what's called the ante-Nicene period. A-N-T-E. I think I have it up on the board. It'll kind of be hard to see right here. Yeah, the apostolic period. Let me see if I can zoom this up a little bit for you guys. So you have the apostolic period from 0 to 70. Then you have the destruction of Israel at 70 AD. Basically, the Romans came in and they wiped out Israel. They destroyed the temple. They burned all the records. And there was no more Israel. All the Jews, 2 million Jews were killed. A lot of the Jews had to run and hide, and they scattered throughout the world and kept their traditions. And essentially, Rome destroyed Israel. Israel was reestablished recently in 1947 after the Holocaust by the UN. You guys can read about that later. Pretty interesting, to say the least, that Israel exists again and it's a world power. Anyways, so that destruction of Israel in 70 AD is kind of what was considered the end of the apostolic period. Then you get this period until 325 called the ante-Nicene. Ante just means before. So before Nicea, the period before Nicea, after the apostles, but before Nicea. And a lot of the like super hardcore amazing Christian thinkers like Augustine and Athanasius, obviously. A lot of the predecessors of the apostles were in this time. They wrote things, and we can read their books, and they kind of confirm a lot of our beliefs. It was a really cool period. The church father period is another term that you can use. So, important period in history. We're going to talk about this when we have a little bit of church history in the church unit, which will be, I believe, the last unit we do. So you'll get more info there. Let me shrink this back up, and we'll do a few more notes, and we'll be finished. So that's a major dividing point in the time frame of how we view Christianity. But this is a super weird, interesting thing because the Emperor Constantine, a Roman emperor, called this meeting and oversaw the meeting, although he was not even technically a Christian because he was unbaptized. So it's really strange. Before this period, the Romans, Rome was like this huge, massive empire, the most advanced empire that ever existed. And it wasn't exactly an empire that was amicable to Christianity. They were hostile towards Christians. So a lot of times the Christians were persecuted. In fact, just before this time is one of the times of the worst persecution of Christians. It was a really hardcore time to be a Christian. I mean, you could be killed. Your whole family could be thrown in prison. It was really rough, right? And then after this, all of a sudden, you have an emperor who's sponsoring a big Christian debate to get a heresy out of there. So it was really strange, and especially since the guy wasn't technically a Christian. But he did preside over it. And this kind of ended the major time of Christian persecution by Rome. So a lot of people celebrated it. However, there are a lot of people who think that this was a major mistake because Christianity essentially had a merger, or at least you could say a cooperative relationship with the secular state. And so people argued at this point, did Christianity kind of lose its pureness, by this event? It's something to think about. It really is something to think about. And, I don't think either of those ideas, of the Christianity conquering the world and even getting into the government is necessarily bad. I don't think that a pure Christianity is also a bad thought either. But, those you'll have to think about in your own faith and talk about with your friends and pastors. So this event was one of the first synods. Synods. It's a vocabulary word. And the synod is basically a council of church leaders or bishops or pastors in the whole world to decide and codify Christian doctrines. And there was kind of one of these, before at the Council of Jerusalem, where they had to decide what was going to happen with the Christians who are not Jewish and how they would express the faith. And everyone agreed that it was by faith, or saved by grace through faith, and that they don't have to obey the Jewish law to be saved. That was huge. And that, everyone agreed to it. All the Christian leaders agreed to it. But that was the apostles. Now it's past the apostles. And so it's a lot bigger. This is called a synod. Now, we don't necessarily have them because there's not just one church anymore. Now there's like multiple denominations. But there are synods within the Catholic Church and the Lutheran Church, and, where they have to come to decisions and agreements based on what doctrines that they're going to teach and believe. So synod is an important term. So I have another piece of artwork for you guys. This is a Greek Orthodox depiction of the Council of Nicea, and you can see it's really interesting. I want you to identify a few things. Number one, can you find Constantine in here? If you look close, you'll see, Constantine wasn't debating, but he was presiding over. All these guys wearing crosses, these are pastors or bishops. And then you got this guy right here in red with a halo. So he was holy too, but he's not wearing any crosses. This is the Emperor Constantine. Nothing really in his hands. He's just listening. And here he is presiding over. So this is Constantine. The arguers, I'm assuming this is Arius. You notice he doesn't have any crosses. He's just got a crude robe on. Shame on him. He didn't believe the truth. So they're debating the heresy. I don't know if this is Athanasius, but I assume it. I don't know what the hat means. I don't know who that guy is writing either. And then there's little baby Jesus up here chilling. What's up? So, we didn't get to this in the other classes, but I'll just share it with you guys, and we'll go over it briefly when you guys return. Number one, the Council of Nicaea was not. And I wrote this because there's a lot of mythology about the Council of Nicaea, because apparently people are too lazy to just look it up on Wikipedia. But it explains it here. The Council of Nicaea was not where the Bible was first written. Like people say, that's where the Catholic Church wrote the Bible or something crazy. No, all the scriptures were compiled already. They were already written and they were already believed way before this. This is the idea where the idea of the Trinity derived is an idea. Nope, the Trinity had existed before this. This is where the hypostatic union and the Trinity was kind of solidified. Sure, you could argue that. But the idea was always there. The reason it came into question is because a heresy came about called Arianism. Some people say this is where the first pope came to power, or that the first pope was considered Constantine. I don't know. This is where the church hid the Gospel of Thomas. That's in like a book, a fictional book series. What's the name of it? I can't remember it. But no, that's nonsense. No one ever accepted the Gospel of Thomas or any of those books as from the Bible or as actual Christian. That's Gnostic teachings. Gnosticism was already over. Now they're dealing with a different cult called Arianism, which is the point of the council. If you listen to some weird cults, they'll say this is where Europeans first took Christianity and decided to implement it on everyone. It's Rome. I wouldn't necessarily call it European, but no, that's not even close to what took place. All you gotta do is just look it up. These are goofy ideas from uneducated people and cults, basically, they used to manipulate you. None of that's true. Anyways, it's just on Wikipedia. I mean, again, it's common knowledge. You just have to go there and read it to be educated. All right, last thing I'll teach you. There's a funny story. St. Nicholas, the guy who the caricature of Santa Claus is derived from, was around at this time, and he actually was part of the Council of Nicaea. And so there's this old tradition that St. Nicholas was arguing for the Trinity, and he was fighting with Arius, and they're arguing, and he got so passionate that he actually stood up and punched or slapped Arius in the face. And as the tradition happens, he was thrown into a prison for it because it was assault. And, it was very anti-Christian. But an angel came, they took his priestly robes or his bishop robes, but an angel came at night and gave him new robes and said that it was forgiven because it needed to happen, basically. It's a really goofy story. Anyways, it's an old mythology story that Santa Claus punched Arius, okay? But that's not, it came 1,000 years after the council. There's no real history of it. It's just a made-up story. But it's also fun to tell your friends, at Christmas time. It's singing Christmas songs about Santa Claus beating up the heathens and the heretics for not believing in the hypostatic union. You can tell that went to your kids, right? Anyways, that's it, guys. That's all we did today. It was a short day, and tomorrow we're going to go over creeds and confessions and a little bit more about Jesus, and we're going to probably get into the person of the Holy Spirit and how he functions in the Trinity. That's it. God bless you guys. Love y'all, and look forward to seeing you guys. Make sure that you are staying safe and doing your due diligence to stop the spread of COVID. Love you guys.